Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuiki. Coming up, Papua New Guinea HIV infections hit a record high. Also,
I know what it's like to feel depressed, and so it was really a driving force to want to do something.
Cook Islands men participate in Movember, and later,
We're very happy and pleased that we're able to expose more players to this sport.
Fiji gears up for the Pacific Cup hockey tournament. The United Nations says AIDS infections continue to soar in parts of the Pacific. UN AIDS marks World AIDS Day on Sunday, 1st of December. Papua New Guinea has long had notoriously high levels of HIV infection, but in recent years the numbers have reached new heights. The head of the NGO Business for Health, or B4H, Anne Clark told Don Wiseman about the state of HIV in PNG.
Don, you and I have been communicating on this topic since the early 2000s, when access to testing and treatment was nowhere near what it is today in 2024. But unfortunately, the AIDS crisis may have passed because we can prevent people dying of AIDS, but in Papua New Guinea, we had another 6,700 new infections last year, which is more than double what we had in the early 2000s.
And why?
We have dropped the ball. We have not had mainstream education and continued awareness about sexual and reproductive health for workplaces, for schools, for children, and for people in the mainstream. Limited funding means that the targeted approach by our international aid agencies is all focused on key affected populations, people living with HIV, people of diverse sexuality, sex workers, men who have sex with men. This is awesome. They are people most affected by HIV. But in Papua New Guinea, we have a mixed epidemic. We have HIV in the key affected populations, but we also have young women and men and older women and men in the workplace being newly infected in 2024.
Who's to blame?
Well, we always need someone to blame. Well, first of all, I blame myself for not being able to raise enough money to talk constantly on the topic. Second of all, we have to share the responsibility amongst everybody who decides and allocates funding. The government of Papua New Guinea has to assume responsibility for the lifelong health and well-being of children in Papua New Guinea. Children in Papua New Guinea have deserved to have excellent community health services from time of birth and excellent sexual and reproductive health services and education when they start school. But not all children in PNG get to go to school. So expecting priority to sexual and reproductive health services is a challenge for the PNG government.
When we talk about 6,700 new infections in the past year, what's the total number of people living with HIV in PNG?
Okay, so in 2024, we have an estimated 77,000 people living with HIV. Not all of them know their status, but we do know that 48,000 of them are on ART, or antiretroviral therapy. But our challenge in 2024 is to achieve what we call viral suppression. And the good news is that we have 28,330. You know these numbers exactly when you have to provide people with daily treatment, eh? So 28,330 people have achieved viral suppression, which means that they continue to take their treatment, they monitor their viral load, and they cannot transmit HIV to their baby or their sexual partners. So what's that? About a third? Not quite. Yeah, nearly half, let's be positive. Nearly half of people living with HIV in PNG have achieved viral suppression because they take ART.
Well, UNAIDS slogan or its theme for this Sunday is take the rights path. What do they mean by that?
For UNAIDS's focus, it's about the rights of those marginal and most vulnerable to HIV infection, the right to access treatment and services for people who are sex workers, people from the gay community or transgender people, Often they feel as if they know their rights are compromised because of the law, and it makes accessing services or even care and support more challenging. For the Businesses for Health project, our focus is on expanding the idea of what are rights associated with HIV for things like a person living with HIV and their right to work, their rights to confidentiality, their rights to reasonable accommodation. We've taken a big, broad look at that and said the rights to sexual and reproductive health education, their rights to be included, the fact that disabled people and disabled workers are more vulnerable to infection of any kind. So lots and lots of our communications over the last month is to get people to consider the broader view of the rights to access good health and the recognition that being able to access all of those rights will end HIV.
Now, B4H, Business for Health, your organisation, you work very closely with businesses.
Yes.
How does this impact businesses, these surging levels of HIV?
The answer to that question is exactly the same as how I would have answered it when I first met you back in the early 2000s. And I put yourself in the seat of a CEO or a managing director, who a young person, an aspiring your best young manager, and in PNG it's likely to be a younger woman who is infected with HIV, an aspiring, powerful young woman, comes to tell you that they're HIV positive. If they don't understand their rights to access testing and free services and free drugs, you may lose that person because they are ashamed or embarrassed or think that they're going to die. So the message is still the same: to ensure that everyone in every workplace understands that they are entitled and have the right to access free testing and free treatment, and that they have the right to ask for reasonable accommodation from their managers and supervisors. Otherwise, the workplace is likely to lose altogether a fantastic young person from their workforce.
And you do seem to get pretty good support from across businesses in PNG.
I'm the master of looking positive. We end 2024 with absolutely zero cash sponsors for our work this year, Don, but we persist, and businesses pay to attend our workplace training, which is what sustains the employment of our team.
World leaders, including from the Pacific, are currently meeting in South Korea to try agree on a new international treaty to curb plastic pollution. A new study wants nations to agree on mandating new products to be made with 40% post-consumer recycled plastic, cap new plastic production at 2020 levels, invest significantly in waste management, and put a small fee on plastic packaging. Neil Nathan, one of the authors of the study, told Caleb Fotheringham, business as usual will mean plastic waste will continue to grow exponentially.
If we don't do anything, if we don't have a strong treaty in place and make a really big effort to reduce plastic pollution and waste, we're on track to nearly double the amount of plastic pollution or mismanaged plastic waste entering our environment in 2050. So that's a really alarming amount. We modeled what this could look like as a cumulative amount of plastic that's been generated between 2011 through a year like 2050. And it would be enough plastic to essentially cover the entire island of Manhattan in a pile that's 10 times the height of the Empire State Building. So this is a massive amount of waste we're looking at. But the other amazing findings of the study and the model show that it really is an issue that we can do something about. We can actually nearly eliminate this problem by 2050, by 2040 even, just with a few but ambitious and a comprehensive set of policies that are currently being negotiated at the treaty. Our research showed us that just 4 critical policies that extend upon the entire life cycle of plastic can actually reduce mismanaged plastic waste or plastic pollution by more than 90% by 2050. So we see this as the research helped us understand the scale of this problem. It also gave us a bit of optimism knowing that this is a critical moment for our planet, and that if countries come together to land on an ambitious treaty at the end of Busan, we can actually perhaps do something about this major global challenge.
I'm actually a little bit surprised, and maybe I'm just very ignorant, that the problem was still heading in such a terrible direction, because at least in New Zealand, plastic bags, you can't get them from the supermarket anymore. It seems like people are more mindful about trying to recycle, and it seems like there's also more use of plant-based plastics, I suppose, which I'm assuming they can degrade over time quite easily, unlike what I would view as traditional plastics, which can last for forever and just break down to microplastics. Are those efforts really not doing as much as we might have hoped?
Those are incredibly important efforts, and even I sometimes in some of the grocery stores that I go to in California, I'm always, very happy and grateful to see different types of alternatives starting to grow in popularity. But the crux of this is that this is really a very small percentage of the amount of actual plastic and packaging that is being produced. In terms of the actual mass of plastics, things like plastic bag bans, which aren't really prevalent across a huge amount of the world. There's several countries that have implemented these to great success, several subnational areas as well, but by and large, that isn't the case in the majority of the world. And our model is really looking at a more global focus. In terms of these alternatives as well, there is a lot of really great innovation happening out there, but not enough support from the government to sort of drive more investment and drive more innovation and market scaling for those solutions. So that's kind of where we see Plastic Treaty being able to help, is be able to actually scale up some of the solutions that you might be seeing in your supermarket, but that are actually being felt elsewhere. The way that we see this problem really expanding, the way we modeled it is by trying to understand the relationship between plastic consumption over time historically, and how that has changed with economic growth, with changes in GDP, as well as changes in population across our major world study regions, and then looking into the future and what these projections are for changes in growth in GDP, growth in population, trying to understand what that will mean for plastic consumption. And we're certainly on a steep upwards trend here if we don't do something about it now.
Cook Islands men are encouraged to prioritise their mental well-being for November. CITV News reports the Movember Cook Islands team have been running events all month to raise awareness and encourage men to speak up and seek help rather than suffering in silence. Tiana Hexton has more.
The global movement has one goal: to stop men dying too young. 5 friends came together to make the Movember movement an annual event in the Cook Islands. Reikorangi Ellison says his own personal experiences motivated him to make a difference.
For me, myself, I had a lot of traumatizing experiences growing up as a child, which translated into my adult life. And so I know what it's like to feel depressed. And so it was really a driving force to want to do something. Maybe from me speaking out could encourage others to want to look for their healing.
From Broga, Yoga for Bros, flash tattoos with a cause, and moustache competitions, Movember is full of fun activities. But it is also full of serious conversations. A highlight of the annual event is the Kaikai and Kōrero, a dinner event where men from the community share stories of their own mental health journeys. Ellison says this breaks barriers and stigmas around men's mental health and trauma.
It's not normal, no way. By me sharing, I guess it encouraged others to start sharing, just normalizing it and just to know that it's okay. And if you think you have, there's something wrong, then don't ever feel like it's an inconvenience to reach out.
On Tuesday, 4 artists spent 14 hours tattooing 44 people in the Movember Flash Tattoo fundraiser. Tattooist Luther Berg says their studio was packed with people keen to support the cause. He says it was all about selflessness.
Most of the designs that I've created all involve elements of traditional weaving, signifying the idea of interweaving selflessness with one's actions in their own lives each day. Just the idea that people are willing to endure the pain to mark their bodies is a very humbling predicament to find myself in. That has to be treated with the utmost responsibility, focus, and concern for the wearer of the tattoos.
Honing in on the spirit of selflessness, the Flash Tattoo Day doubled as a charity fundraiser for the local vet clinic. Berg says the act of giving, alongside raising awareness on men's mental health in the Cook Islands, is worthwhile.
This makes me feel just very good, finally doing something that is selfless, where the funds are not going into my bank account. It's quite freeing and quite liberating just to know and understand that whatever is generated, everything is just willingly given outward. And this is the best way to conduct oneself during these charitable excursions.
Alison says Movember has created a safe space for men to recognise and accept their struggles and take the first step towards seeking help.
You have like the odd person that may come up to you and be like, thank you for sharing your story. It's really encouraged me to want to start their own journey in healing, whatever that may look like for them.
The Cook Islands Movember activities wrap up this weekend with a Mo competition, with prizes to be won by those growing out their moustaches as a symbol of advocacy for men's mental health.
Fiji will host the Oceania Pacific Cup hockey tournament at the Laudala Hockey Turf in Suva from the 9th to the 12th of December. The event, which has attracted 7 countries and a total of 16 teams competing in the men's and women's competition, is making a return after a lapse of 6 years. And as Elias Atora reports, host Fiji are having to deal with mixed challenges as they prepare to welcome fellow competitors home.
The Fiji men's hockey teams are racing against time to be ready for the tournament as they round up the preparations of their 2 teams, the Fiji Nationals and the Fiji Warriors. Head coach Sean Corey says they have had some challenges.
Preparation has been tough with all the boys coming back from the World Cup and having to get back into their normal daily lives. The guys out in the West are without the turf. We had a delayed season, so trying to get everybody back into the groove and trialing out for fives has been tough for us. The guys in the West, a lot of them work on shift work. The guys that were in the squads for Pacific Games and the World Cup, just getting back.
Corey says they have had to select players who they believe will fit into their game plan, while also selecting some younger players who they want to expose to the competition as part of their development plan.
Because of the lack of time, we selected the core group of players from districts that we knew could fit Fiji standards to come and trial out. So we're giving them that opportunity. So with 2 Fiji teams being given spots to play in the tournament, we're very happy and pleased that we're able to expose more players to this fold.
But his women's coach counterpart, Alison Southey, says she is excited about where her players are at right now as they finalize their preparations, with most having coming through a busy season.
So preparations have been very good. We've had women come out of the hockey league season as well as the last Mars tournament, and having them at that certain level and moving into national requirements has had its challenges the last 5 weeks. But being where we are right now, with the assistance of a strength and conditioning coach as well as someone help skills and drills, I'm really positive.
Sadi says they are grateful for all the support they have received from families and players, which had made their work easier.
Because it's hard work. I mean, the women, if it was easy, every second person would be a national rep. But because they have the support from home, it just makes it so much easier for us, coach them and have them on the team. So a special mention to everyone back home, family, friends, employers who make it possible to allow the athletes to come and just focus on what they do best, which is play hockey and represent the countries.
The Pacific Cup ran from 2008 through to 2018. Starting as an 11-a-side competition, which turned into a 5-a-side competition in 2017. Australia and New Zealand sent invitation teams, namely the Australian Country Under-21 and New Zealand Barbarians and Maori men's teams, Presidents and Maori women's teams. Teams who are competing this year are Fiji Nationals, Fiji Warriors, Vanuatu, Tonga, Samoa, PNG, Solomon Islands, and New Zealand Fijians in the men's division, while the women will feature Fiji, Fiji Warriors, Vanuatu, Tonga, Samoa, PNG, Solomon Islands, and New Zealand Heritage Pacific.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tō whā sui fua.